and welcome to the Divorce Women's Guide podcast, where we talk about the things us divorcees are thinking, but not always talking about, as we turn our divorce into the best gift we've ever been given. And I do so with a little bit of sass and a whole lot of class. I am your host, Wendy Sterling, founder of the Divorce Rehab. I am here to support you in this transition phase of your life so you can start your new best chapter on your own terms. After all, that's what I did after my own divorce. And now it is my mission to change the conversation around divorce and help you see why your divorce, like mine, was the best gift you ever received. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Divorce Woman Guide podcast. I'm so happy you've tuned in because today I am joined by my dear friend and colleague, Susan Guthrie, to talk about how your divorce is an opportunity, or as I like to call it, the best gift I ever gave myself. Susan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wendy, thank you so much for having me. I just was telling you that's one of my favorite quotes. My divorce was the best gift I ever gave myself. It's true.
It is true. So, and many people already know, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that together today, because I know you have a similar point of view. So I'm going to share a little bit about you with our audience today for those who don't know you. So Susan Guthrie is a nationally recognized lawyer. She's one of the top family law and mediation attorneys in the country and has been helping individuals and families navigate separation and divorce for 30 years. Susan provides online divorce mediation and legal coaching services to select clients around the world and provides curated resources to those experiencing divorce through her business, Divorce in a Better Way. Susan recently launched her fresh and inspiring new podcast, the Divorce and Beyond podcast with Susan Guthrie, Esquire, which debuted on iTunes' top podcasts list for self-help podcasts and is focused on pulling back the curtain on the mysteries of the divorce process and bringing tips and resources to help people thrive and shine in their new future beyond divorce. Susan has also been featured in and on media outlets such as CNBC, MarketWatch, Forbes, Ion Chicago, WGN, the ABA's Just Resolutions magazine, Thrive Global, The Nook Online, among many others. And she's licensed to practice law in the state of California and Connecticut, as well as before the Supreme Court of the United States. Wow. What a resume. Yeah. It's fun to hear, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a lot of stuff, but I guess I've been around for a long time. So 30 years of doing anything, you start to I guess build up a lot of stuff. So
you do, and your credibility and your expertise. I know you've been an amazing guiding light for me in this process, and I'm honored to say that I've been on your podcast, which everyone should tune into and listen to. It's amazing. And I know that you and I have a lot of similar thought processes on what divorce can bring to somebody's life. And, you know, the easier way of saying that really is that there are silver linings in divorce. And in fact, as I've said, it is a gift. And you say something similar, right? You say that divorce is an opportunity. And I'd love for you to share with our audience today what that means to you.
yeah, it's something that's evolved in my thinking over the years. And I should mention, I myself have been divorced as well. So I've been through the process. I'm married to someone who has been divorced also. So I'm a stepmother to his children. So having been through all of that myself and gone through it with hundreds of clients, the number one thing that I've noticed is that people are often focused on what they feel they've lost, and they are completely unaware of what they're gaining.
Mm-hmm.
And that's human nature. I think it's very difficult to lose something or to lose what you thought you had. I think that's probably a more accurate description of what's happening. But truly, having done this with hundreds and hundreds of people over 30 years and having experienced it myself, I do know that transitioning beyond the relationship that wasn't working into a new life is really a catalyst for change that will take you to a better future. And it just takes pivoting from looking back to looking forward. And that sounds so simple. And as you and I both know, it's oh so hard. And that's why my podcast is Divorce and Beyond. And that's why your podcast is here to help people realize the gift that they're being given. But it's a difficult time for people.
It is. And there's such a learning curve, right? And it's a learning curve across relearning who you are, who you lost, and who you've become. And there's also a learning curve in the process of divorce. I mean, I was married to an attorney and thought I knew some law terms, but divorce opened up a whole other window that I didn't know about. It was like a foreign language when I walked into that process. And as a result, I know that there were definitely some mistakes that I made along the way because I just didn't know. I didn't have the knowledge. And, I also think that's why it's so important to get support in all the areas you need, because you really don't know what you don't know. So what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make through this process that, you'd love to share today so people listening don't make them?
Yeah, and I do think there are some very consistent mistakes that I see, having done this for a long time. The first one is something that I referenced when I was talking about divorce as an opportunity, and that is people stay very focused on the past and don't think about the future. And I'm not now speaking of it from that divorce as an opportunity concept, but when you are negotiating your divorce, when you are going through the divorce process, if you are not focused on what your life will be after the divorce, then you are not negotiating from a place of creating that life and creating a settlement that's going to help you move forward. So one of those big mistakes is, because people are so focused on their past and looking for the band-aid that's going to make them feel better, or the retribution that they feel they deserve, or the judgment that the other person is bad or wrong or something of that nature. And they're looking for the divorce process to fill that need instead of focusing on the divorce process, filling the need of creating your new future and supporting you as you move forward into that. And I know it's hard to do. It goes to that emotional content that is so ever present in the divorce proceeding, but that's one place where it's very easy to get help. Coaches like you, people who help people through the process. One of the main things, and one of the reasons why I love having clients work with coaches, is because they help with that emotional content. They help bring that under control and turn the focus from the past to the future. And that's a critical component. The other one, I would say, would be not getting the proper education. As you just referenced, which I think is very valuable that you told people that you were married to an attorney and still feel you made some mistakes maybe during the divorce because you don't know what you don't know. And these days, I think people feel the only place they can go to get information on divorce is an attorney. And I can say to you, as an attorney, that is not the only place. And in many cases, sometimes not the best place, at least not to start. Because if you're getting a divorce, you should be educating yourself on the process, on what to expect, on how to select an attorney or a process, and then how to select your team before you build the team. And that's a very critical part, because if you go and hire the wrong person or make the wrong choice of platform to get, to move through your process, that's going to have a significant impact on your result and your process and your experience of the divorce. So these days, There's so much information out there, so much information. I mean, I know you, Wendy, you do workshops, you do your coaching, we have our podcasts, I have YouTube channels, my website's a plethora of information. There are programs out there. I mean, there is a wealth of knowledge. And if you want to educate yourself, it's out there for you to find. Just make sure you're getting it from credible and reliable sources.
Yeah, and I think, what I also hear a lot too, and I've actually heard a lot of lately is it's almost like there's too much and they don't know what's right for them. Right. So do you have any advice or tips on, how to help them navigate what is best for them? Like, how do they even know?
Yeah. So, and I think that's a great first question for them to be asking. And so, really, I think one of the first places would be determining and getting an education just on what does divorce look like in my state. And again, that is not going to be a very difficult thing to find. If you Google divorce in wherever, it's going to come up. I will say for people who are listening who are in California, I always recommend go to Hello Divorce. You are very lucky to be in California where that is available. But there are a million websites, a million different platforms that will give you just a basic understanding. But even just at a high level, I can tell you, you will need to determine how you're going to divide your marital estate, which is your assets and liabilities. You're going to need to determine how you're going to co-parent your children and what that schedule will look like. You're going to need to determine things like child support and alimony if relevant. And there you go. That's the general structure of every divorce that happens. Now, can that be more complicated or less complicated? Absolutely. But those are the questions that will need to be addressed. And there's a great deal of information about the process. And then you need to make a decision about the process that works best for your family to determine how you're going to do those three things, how you're going to divide things, who's going to pay what support, who's going to receive what, and how you're going to co-parent. I mean, me, I have a mediation practice. I believe very strongly in mediation for most families. But educate yourself even on what that is. Most people don't really even understand it.
No, and I think that, because there's, it's court, it's mediation, there's settlement conferences, there's so many different options that people have out there that I agree with you. I think that, I also think that we know intrinsically what would work best, right? If you know that you have an amicable relationship or amicable enough where you can go to mediation, it's definitely an avenue and one I believe people should consider, just because, to stay out of court is what you want to do at all costs. That's where the costs start getting driven up. And we've talked about this too, is really like, this is exactly why the decisions that you make on how to go about your divorce, right, is so critical, because court can become a money pit.
Court will become a money pit.
Yeah.
Trust me. That's how I made my living for 25 years. I did well doing that, but it is a very expensive proposition because yes, it's comfortable. I will say that. One of the reasons I think people reach out and hire an attorney is because then you take the mess and you put it in someone else's hands or on someone else's desk, and you put your trust and faith in them that they're going to handle it for you. And having been that person who got those things put on my desk, I very much wanted to do the very best I could for my clients, and had, worked through that. But the problem is you are now having someone else do everything, and they're charging you, hundreds of dollars an hour to do that, because that's the formula for a family law litigation case. That's just how it rolls. And I always liken it to telephone tag. My client would pick up the phone and call me. That was a billable event. Then I would call the other attorney to talk about what my client talked to me about. That's a billable event. Then that attorney would call the other spouse. I don't bill for that because I wasn't a part of it, but they're going to get billed for it. Then the attorney will call me back, right? And it goes back and forth like that. So think about the money that just cost. And the other the time that just costs. That doesn't happen in a stream like that. And the unseen issue with that is now it's getting filtered through professionals. You're not speaking directly with your spouse, and the emotional content goes up, right? You made my attorney call me because you complained about, or whatever it was. But it's a very expensive paradigm, very, and it's not necessary in most cases.
Yeah, and I think, you said something that resonated with me is that, I hired an attorney because that felt safe to me because I was going up against an attorney. And while he wasn't in the field of family law, it felt really intimidating and I was really scared. And in some ways I'm grateful that I did, right? And she is wonderful. But in other cases, there's some things that I probably didn't need to go through a lawyer for. And, mediation would have been a really great, route. That again, I also think that mediation keeps you in a place of, as our friend Kate Anthony says, like putting your kids in the center instead of putting them in the middle of the divorce process. And really, it is an opportunity for you to start looking at what is next, what life will look like next, right? Instead of staying in this place of uncertainty, which, even in the environment we're living in today, there is so much of that. And how that's probably also impacting the mediation process even now.
Yeah, well, right now, I mean, the mediation process is becoming, I think, a more favored alternative because it's available, and so people are able to access mediators online and still get help with things. And you can still talk to your attorney these days online, but there's not a lot that they're able to do for you without the court system to back it up, to be able to file a motion or to do something in a courtroom. But the problem with litigating and negotiating a divorce in a litigated setting, I always found, was that when we litigate, the mindset of attorneys, and I think that this is one thing that the movie Marriage Story did well. It got this point across. So I just reference it because people, if they've seen it, they'll understand. Litigation is very centered on taking the behaviors that brought about the demise of the marriage or things that have happened during the marriage, the facts of your broken relationship, and using those facts to bolster your case. Right. So everybody saw that scene in the movie where he had trouble with the car seat and exploded. And then that got turned around in a courtroom setting as almost an abusive moment. And you saw Scarlett Johansson turn to Adam Driver and mouth to him in the courtroom, "I'm sorry." It was a very telling moment because I've spent years where you hear a story as an attorney and you're thinking, how does this play out as evidence in a courtroom? But how helpful is that really in your life? And what is that I said in the beginning of all of this that is what you really don't want to be doing? It's very past focused. Instead of in mediation, where you sit down or online, virtually, my entire practice is online. So you look at each other on a computer screen and you start talking about how to restructure your family in a way that makes the future work better. And so it's just an entirely different focus. It's not about blame. It's not about making someone right or wrong. It's about what's going to work best for your family.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important that we don't necessarily think about is like how important having that roadmap is. And that's a lot of what I do with my clients, right? In the coaching world is really helping them to see where it is that you want to go. What does that vision look like for you? And so from that vantage point, what is it that you want to negotiate on? Where do you want, it helps you pick your battles because
Oh,
you're
God.
not going to win them all. So what are some examples that you've experienced on, why roadmaps are so crucial for their next chapter?
Well, I could, you say this and it immediately brings to mind, I'm working with one client right now and she's in mediation. So I'm working with her as her consulting attorney outside of mediation. And she came back after one of the mediation sessions, and there's some very critical issues going on financially in the case around, selling of a property and refinance. And she very much wants to maintain the house for her daughter's sake. And so there's these big major critical issues. And when I asked her what they talked about and what happened in the mediation session, she said, oh, it didn't go very well. And then she proceeded to tell me that for almost an hour and a half, they argued over the piano.
Wow.
And whether, right? So they spent an hour and a half of their mediation and their money on mediation talking about what it was worth, whether they should sell it. This is such a small, insignificant piece of information within the grand scope of the plan and what's actually important to her. But the problem was, is she went into that mediation and got derailed by an emotional content around an item. And unfortunately, that led to losing sight of what was actually important and drawing a line in the sand over something that wasn't. And that's why having a roadmap, I mean, that's a really good example of why you need to know which battles to pick and which hills to die on and which ones. I'm not saying in a negotiation setting, you would immediately just go to the table and say, here's what's important to me, here's what you can have, and this is how you do it. That's not a negotiation. That's not a good negotiating strategy. But you need to know when you go into any negotiation, what is most important to you, what is moderately important to you, and what isn't that important to you. And you need to know that or have an idea of it for the other side as well. That's key, because you can give and take then. Because if there's one thing over here on the top of your list and they have something over on the other side of their list that you can give, maybe that's a good trade-off. But you don't want to spend an hour and a half talking about a piece of furniture, or, somebody mentioned to me the other day in one of their mediations that their old Honda, valued at, I think it's $7,000 or something, has sentimental value for them. And so it was really important for them to keep that car. And, that's the sort of thing where, I know that's an emotional reaction. It's not a practical reaction. And it's not a reaction, again, that's focused forward. It's focused backward. So the roadmap is key.
I think that what that also helps you focus on is, um, you know, it helps you focus on, like, at the end of the day, what is really important to you? Like, is it the piano? Is it really the piano? I mean, and listen, I am guilty. I had one fight over something, now looking back, so stupid and insignificant, but I was digging my heels in the sand because it was one of those things that I wanted to hurt him. And all I did was hurt myself by fighting for something that now I just am like, what was I thinking? Right?
We all have one of those, by the way. So forgive yourselves, everyone out there who's saying that, because I'm a divorce attorney and I can tell you there's one of those things in my court as well from my divorce.
Yes. See, so I mean, and that is the piece that we're all human, right? And, and I am grateful. I did have a roadmap and it was incredibly helpful. It also helped me to realize what was most important, right? When you look at everything and if you had to rank, right? Like, and this is what my attorney and I did. It was like, when you look at it and you have to rank what's really important at the end of the day, it sort of puts things into perspective for you too, and what the long-term ramifications are for those, battles that you want to fight. Like, is it really worth it in the end, right? So I think that's a very, very valid and reasonable point to make. And I know that, your entire podcast is called, Divorce and Beyond. And, because it is, you have to think beyond just the divorce. Yes, it's a business transaction, but you have to think beyond that. So I love the name of your podcast, and I'd love for you to explain to our listeners a little bit more about why you chose that name.
Yeah, I really put a lot of thought into creating this podcast because having done this for so long, I know that when you are going through divorce, it is all consuming. It feels like your entire life becomes about the divorce, and it's like sucked all of the rest of your life out of you. And part of that is what I call divorce limbo, because your life goes into this holding pattern of not knowing, what the future is going to look like. And again, you've lost whatever you thought it was going to be, but often you don't know what money you'll have, whether you're keeping the house or selling it. So there's this whole horrible time of limbo that you're living in, and the future just seems impossible. Like you're never going to get there. And what I want people to know when they're going through divorce is a finite period of time. The other, besides getting divorced in a case where a divorce was a good idea, being a good gift to give to yourself, the other gift you can give to yourself is moving through the divorce process without dragging your heels, without dragging it out, and getting to the other side. Because that's when your life really will start again. Your new future begins. And the limbo period of that time in divorce is just this little blip on your radar, and you're going to wake up a year later after the divorce and wonder why you argued over what was mine. I think it was, oh God, it was something we had gotten when we were on our honeymoon. It was some stupid thing that hung on the wall and I had to have it. Right. Now I don't have it anymore. But those are the stupid things you will argue over. And then you will wake up a year later and wonder why that was so important. You are going to get to life beyond divorce. And I can almost utterly guarantee you it is going to be so much better than certainly life during divorce. But I think most of us would say also life before the divorce. Because if a relationship has gotten to the point of divorce, it either wasn't the relationship you thought it was. And so you lost something, but what it was is you lost the illusion of the relationship you thought you had, or you were the one who wanted the divorce and it just took you a while to get there. And the other side, that's what I want people to focus on, the possibilities of change and where you can go. Because you and I both know, and we work with people every day,
Mhm.
it's so much better beyond.
It absolutely is. And and that's the place that I work from, right? With my clients, it's, operating based on what it is you want that future to look like. You get to be present to what that is today and act in accordance with what you want your future to look like. And you get to be the creator in that process, right? And I know you have that's something that you say a lot too, right? Is, you talk about a created future.
Yeah, I mean, that phrase alone, you say it and it gets me excited because we actually, as adults especially, do not get many opportunities in life to sort of wipe our slate clean and create a new future. We can reinvent, we can make changes, but divorce is actually a time in life where we can make major pivots, to major changes, go back to school, move, find a new relationship that works well for us, whatever those things might be. And although change, we all know, is scary, I know, been through a lot of it myself lately, it is what brings about the growth, and it is what brings about the most exciting things that will come about for you. And you get to take that moment in time, and it's almost like sitting down in the divorce, what you referenced earlier, and prioritizing what's important to you. You almost carry that forward. And when you create your future, you take those same values, principles, and interests, and you can now apply them to that future and creating it. And that's what's so exciting, that you get to sit down and say, what if, or what do I want to do? And then, my point is always look at your divorce settlement and work with your mediator, work with your ex-spouse, work with your divorce attorney to structure a settlement that's going to help you move toward that future that you're envisioning. An example I always give to clients is, if say what you've decided is you need to go back to school. Well, then structure the parenting plan so that you have availability to take classes. Structure your support, maybe that you get more support up front for a shorter period of time, but a little bit more, so that you can afford to not be working as much and go to school fast. I mean, think about how you want that to look. And then you will find yourself, moving into that future in a much more supported and present way.
Yeah, and I think that that's a great tip. I was actually talking to a client earlier today around that, right? Especially in the times that we're in now with our kids home from school. She's struggling with trying to figure out, like, there are these things that she wants to do, but how does she fit it in when she's with her kids? And and it's an ongoing thing, right? It's not like you're just doing that, when you're married, or you're just doing it while you're going through divorce. Like, it's a constant change is a constant, right? It is.
Yes.
Life is change. It's never going to be the same all the time. And so I agree with you, and I say this to everybody: change is inevitable, and you've just got to let yourself feel through whatever comes up as a result, but trust that on the other side you're going to be bigger, better, stronger from it.
Yeah. In your world beyond, right?
Yes, in your world beyond divorce.
Yes. You will get to a point, I always find this, but you will get to a point where your divorce does not define you. It's just something that happened. It's another experience you went through in life. It feels all consuming now when you're facing it. It becomes a blip in your personal radar
Yeah.
down the
And
road.
go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just, I really believe that. I mentioned to people that I've been through a divorce. It was a long time ago. I'm remarried, but it didn't take that long beyond, once I finally got beyond it, for it, it was an experience that I've gone through. It changed my practice. It made me, I think, more compassionate to clients and more understanding of what the emotional content is, because I lost my mind just like everybody else does. But I got help with that, and I encourage everybody who's listening to get help with that. It is an emotional state, but it truly is just a moment in time. It will end. This difficult, sad, or angry, or fear, that I truly believe the number one emotion most people feel, or the predominant emotion, is fear. And you will move through that and get to the other side, and it is just a better world over there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, keeping an open mind to what is possible, and seeing it as a neutral event. You choose what charge you want to put on it. And when you have the strength to be able to shift and see it as, again, I say that it's a gift, and I also say that it happens for you, not to you. And when you see that in your rearview mirror, I mean, I am so grateful for what I went through, because I wouldn't be sitting here today. And you are sitting on the other side. You are an example of what is possible on the other side. And part of my mission, even not even just with this podcast, but with everything that I'm out in the world talking about and doing, is to show that we are all examples of what is possible beyond the world of divorce. And really, all of us are living our best lives. We've created these amazing careers. We've created these amazing new experiences for ourselves that we never would have had we
Mm-mm.
not gone through what we did. And that is where the gift is, right?
That's so on point and so correct. And that is the gift. The gift doesn't really have anything to do, I think, with ending the relationship or what you get out of the divorce or anything like that. The gift is that you give yourself the ability to create a new future that actually works for you, and is the future that you choose and that you will move into. And yes, I can't even imagine what my life would have been like. And not, I also have the privilege and pleasure of helping other people as you do through this difficult time and through this path. And that's one of the reasons why I share that I've been divorced as well, is I want people to know that the other side is a place to get to. It's trust us, it will be better.
It will. Well, Susan, I love talking with you. This has been
Always.
I know, this has been such a great conversation. And I know that you have a wonderful free gift for our listeners today. So I would love for you to share a little bit about the top 5 tips for a successful divorce video.
Oh, yes. So I have a great video that I created, which is my top 5 tips. We've touched on a few of them here, but it's really when you're talking about where do you start with this video. It's not a long video. I think it's about 15 minutes long, but it truly gives you that beginning roadmap for how to move into the divorce process. So I'll give you the link and you can put it in your show notes for people. And I really hope that it gives everybody a clean and clear start, because I know many people are sitting in a difficult place right now as they're deciding what their future should be.
Well, that's so generous and such a huge, incredible resource for so many people who are going to be listening, because so many do not know where to start. So thank you. I will be sure to include that in the show notes so that you guys can easily find it and click on the link to download and watch the video yourself. And Susan, as always, so wonderful to hear your voice and to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, and congratulations on the new podcast.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Divorced Woman's Guide podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this episode with someone you know or spread the word on social media. This is how I reach more divorcees around the world and provide them with the support they need to create their next best life. And I would also love to continue the conversation with you. So please friend me on Facebook, join my private Facebook group, The Divorce Rehab, and follow me on Instagram at Divorce Rehab with Wendy. I'll see you next time.